Welcome to the SABC News COVID-19 Global Wrap, where myself, Babalola Phaka, and my colleague Busisiwe Khatebe bring you highlights of news which dominated headlines with regards to the coronavirus pandemic. But before we delve into it, let us have a look at some global stats. The world currently sits at over 42 million confirmed COVID-19 cases, with over 31 million recoveries and over 1.1 million deaths. South Africa has over 710,000 confirmed cases, with over 642,000 recoveries and over 18,800 deaths.
In South Africa, Minister of Health Dr. Zweli Mkhize has emphasized that South Africa remains at a risk of a resurgence of the coronavirus pandemic. Mkhize, who is in quarantine after testing positive for the virus last week, says the country's epidemiological reports show a 9.1% increase in new cases over the last 7 days. There has been an increase of 10.7% in the last 14 days. Meanwhile, Western Cape Premier Alan Winde says the increase in the number of active COVID-19 cases in the province over the past 2 weeks is predominantly driven by certain super spreader events and clusters of infections. Winde says the province has seen an increase of over 13% of new active cases in the past 7 days, which is lower than the health department's definition of a resurgence, which is an increase of more than 20%. On to the rest of Africa. The continent has now recorded over 1.6 million confirmed COVID-19 cases, with over 1.3 million recoveries and over 40,760 deaths. Lesotho and South Africa will be the first neighbors in the region to roll out the rapid antigen tests for COVID-19. These tests will only take 15 to 30 minutes and will drastically reduce the cost down to 170 Rand. The mobile testing unit is capable of completing at least 2 tests with complete results every 30 minutes. According to the UN Agency for HIV/AIDS, COVID-19 could lead to the deaths of 500,000 HIV-positive people in sub-Saharan Africa if interruption to HIV and TB services continue. UNAIDS held its virtual 51st Union Conference on Lung Health, where speakers discussed the impact of COVID-19 on other illnesses and healthcare in general. There are fears that the global COVID-19 pandemic will reverse progress made in fighting and managing other life-threatening diseases like HIV and TB. And lastly, Ethiopia can jail people for up to 2 years if they deliberately violate COVID-19 restrictions, the Attorney General's office said, amid concern that citizens are becoming lax after a state of emergency was lifted.
And in international news, United States President Donald Trump launched a new attack against top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci, calling him an idiot and a national disaster over his approach in tackling COVID-19, which has killed over 228,000 Americans.
People are tired of hearing Fauci and all these idiots, these people that have gotten it wrong. Every time he goes on television, there's always a bomb, but there's a bigger bomb if you fire him. But Fauci's a disaster. I mean, this guy's, if I listened to him, we'd have 500,000 deaths.
As the nation battles a surge in infections, 40,000 COVID-19 patients occupied hospitals in the United States for the first time since August on Wednesday. In Latin America, Argentina has become the 5th country in the world to exceed 1 million COVID-19 cases, straining hospitals and healthcare workers, with over 60% of the country's ICU beds being occupied. While the country grapples with low testing levels, more than 60% of those who are getting tested are receiving positive results, which is one of the world's highest positivity rates. Meanwhile, Mexico City on Monday warned of tighter virus curbs that could be imposed as hospitalizations ticked for nearly 10 days. In Europe, Ireland has imposed some of the continent's toughest COVID-19 restrictions as cases surge, with Prime Minister Michael Martin moving the country back to level 5 lockdown as of Wednesday. And while Germany's infection rates are lower than in much of Europe, they have been accelerating rapidly since the onset of cooler weather, with politicians warning that stricter social distancing rules may be needed if the trend continues. And finally, the United Nations says the COVID-19 pandemic is pushing the world into extreme poverty and is undermining efforts to have poverty eradicated by 2030. Leaders at the UN say the pandemic demands solidarity and strong collective action.
For the latest updates on the coronavirus, visit sabcnews.com.